So welcome everyone to the Lampstand Virtual Lunch. We have three special guests today. The first being Rhea Cheng, who did a cooking video on one of her family's recipes for lamb, which is stir-fried lamb with scallions, and we'll talk about that. Rhea is a recent Parsons grad, an artist, and is in the process of putting together a cookbook of her family recipes, one of which we're eating today. Katya Ekimian, did I do that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is a knitwear designer and a executive chef and a lover of sheep and occasional shepherdess. And we'll talk about all that. My niece, Jenne Bergstrom, is a double-barreled food blogger, cookbook author, and research librarian. And this is her third virtual lunch, so she's the veteran. So great group today. Just want to start by talking about the dish. I'll show you mine. I don't know if this is going to work, but are you getting that?
Yeah, the edge of it anyway.
Yes.
Looks good. Oh, let me get mine.
Yeah, and this is the third time I've made it, and it's just the lamb is so tender the way it's cooked, and the sauce is delicious. I made some Puerto Rican style white rice to go with it to absorb some of the juice this time. I did noodles this is the third time I've made it, and each time I've done it slightly differently, but the recipe is awesomely good. So Katya, what about you?
Here's mine. I don't know if you can see. Woo.
Yeah.
Hey.
But I was just saying I actually don't eat lamb. So I did mine with Beyond Meat. I do eat lamb occasionally, but only when I'm like on a farm. I don't know. But the recipe is so good. I absolutely love it.
What about you, Jenne?
Yeah, here's mine. I was making some rice, but then I realized I didn't press the button on the rice cooker, so it's
it happens.
As you can see, it's not very beautifully presented, but it's super delicious. I put lots of cumin. It's really good.
Yes.
You know what I did instead of cumin, because I like things spicy too, when I put at the place in the recipe where you stir fry the garlic and ginger and the green pepper, I put in some shug, which is a Middle Eastern condiment. Jenne knows all about it. That involves, the recipe calls for a dozen jalapeno peppers, so you can get the idea. It's pretty hot. And I thought that actually did kind of accented it very well. It was in lieu of what you do at the end of putting in the pepper flakes and the cumin. But Rhea, just give us your thoughts on the dish from your perspective as the chef.
Yeah, actually, it was the first time that I've ever made that dish. Because like in my family, we barely eat lamb. We usually eat pork and chicken and beef. But we only eat lamb in the winter for like a hot pot or something. Because in Chinese culture, lamb is like a thing that makes your body feel anxious. For somehow, it's not like a psychologically thing, but it's for your physical body. It's hard to explain.
So did you just adapt a recipe that you cook using pork or chicken to do the lamb? Or
yes.
Yeah.
Or also beef.
Right. So you just substitute it in.
Yes, yes. And also because the dish is originally from Beijing. And as I know that Beijing don't eat too spicy. They like.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, they like food somehow more sweet or I can't explain because I barely been to Beijing, but yes. But in my city, we like spicy food. So.
And you're in Wuhan, right?
Yes, I'm in Wuhan, which is in the middle part of China and might be the biggest city in China as well.
Really?
Yes.
It's bigger than Beijing?
Yes.
Wow. I didn't know that. But since you're coming to us from Wuhan at 1 o'clock Monday morning, your time.
Oh gosh.
Well, they're ahead of us. So
Yes.
they're so far ahead of us or behind or whatever. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, you can tell us how's Monday going so far.
Yeah, so
going great.
I thought because of Rhea being the guest chef and one of the guests at this lunch and coming to us from Wuhan, it kind of brings up the question of COVID, since that's where it started. And, you know, the question that comes to me is, how has the experience of lockdown and COVID and masking and social distancing and all that, how has it affected each of us, both positively and negatively?
Well, when Wuhan was locked down, I wasn't here. I was in New York City and trying to graduate. So I feel like I had, how to say, it's like a weird feeling of being in another city and your hometown is experiencing something horrible. But then after that, New York City got locked down too, like half lockdown, and the pandemic went crazy that time. I feel like during the pandemic, as Kip told us in the email, we start cooking a lot because we had to stay at home and basically barely go outside. So that was my main thing to do in my daily life, and also think about the fragility of human being, like how the virus attack us and how our body can react and healing ourselves. But I think the way that sorry, let me think. I think the pandemic makes me think what I need to do in my rest of my life. It's like an inspiring thing. Because I feel like in this society, we do things very quick and everything develop, and we barely stop and doing things slow, like cooking, because it's like it's so wasting our time. Like we have to go get groceries and prepare, and then maybe wash dishes or let the dishwasher do it. Probably like 2 hours and only eat for 15 minutes. It's like a inefficient thing to do in nowadays, but I still enjoy it.
Right. So you've been doing a lot more of it as a consequence of the lockdown.
Had you already been planning to write your family cookbook before that, or did this help you decide to do that?
I think it helps me to decide to do. And also after I came back from New York City, it was last year, the end of last year. And then We had Chinese New Year around February, and it was a sad story. My grandma passed away that time, and she's from my dad's side. Not because of COVID, but other. It's like a brain stuff, like the blood came out, and yes, very quickly, and she passed away. And she had been playing a role that take care of the family and cooking, do laundries all the time, maybe for 20 years, because she lived with us, with my parents and I, and also my grandpa, right? And then she passed away, and then my grandpa didn't know what to do, like laundry or cooking, all the stuff.
But you all had to.
He had to, yes, he had to learn from the start, which made me think a lot, like the generation of my grandma, they were like playing a role that take care of the family all the time. Like they barely had their own personal life. So then I started to think, and then I decided to visit my mom's mom, the other grandma, and she cooked a lot too. She cooked for her son and her granddaughters. So I think it's a meaningful thing to do for me and also for her. Since cooking is the important thing. So yes, so I recorded a lot of videos for her.
What, of her cooking thing?
Yes.
Wow. So is the cookbook going to be digital or paper?
Right now it's only draft. So I would like it to be published, but right now I'm still
mostly just text, right?
Yes, trying to include from the videos.
Cool. Yeah. So so Katya, how did COVID affect you?
I think it was really hard, just like Rhea. I was graduating university. I was like in my senior thesis as it happened. And we went online, and I think I was so bummed out. And I was like, oh, this will be a perfect time to just knit. Like I have all the time in the world. Like this will be amazing. Obviously I did not. I was just like, I was like dreading in my apartment, like staring at yarn and like not getting stuff done. But then I had a plan with a woman who sponsored my thesis to buy her sheep. Like she had a farm, and I was going to buy 9 different sheep of like different heritage breeds. So I was like, I can still do that. I can still go do this. The sheep are still born. Like that life goes on, you know? So when my friend and I like masked up and like drove all over and picked up these lambs for her. And then I ended up spending most of the past year and a half now on farms or with people in the wool business. So I think it really helped me shift like my priorities and what I wanted, especially because like graduating university, obviously the graduation was like kind of a joke, like nothing really, you know, nothing happened. Obviously no one was interested in seeing a bunch of kids fashion work that didn't even get finished. And then no one was hiring, you know what I'm saying? So it was kind of just like a bunch of things. So and it kind of helped me figure out what I wanted to do, which is now like working with farms and like kind of selling their wool. And and it's given me kind of the time to do that. So I'm kind of thankful for it because it's just given me time. Yeah, I don't know.
So do you think of yourself mostly as a knitwear designer, an executive chef, or a sheep person?
I think it's all three. But at some point I'm gonna want to edit that down. But I kind of so I just got back from a trip. I work as like a private chef for people and like travel with them, or I do like dinners, and that also gives me the money to then like go to farms for a few months and like so that kind of funds my sheep lifestyle. But it also is pretty intertwined because I work with farms for the produce. I get my meat from this amazing butcher in Queens who sources animals from the tri-state area. So it's all kind of connected in what I do. And then the knitting, I don't know. I think it definitely is all three somewhat equally. But I definitely I'm constantly shifting between them all.
That's great. Were you and Rhea were at Parsons at the same time, right?
Yeah, but you were an MFA.
Yes.
Yeah, I was an undergrad.
Okay. Did you guys run into each other at Parsons or not?
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I was like, if we did, I'm sorry. Like,
That's cool. Just kind of accidental, but cool. So Jenny, what about you and COVID?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, at the beginning, it was kind of exciting in a way, it's like, oh, we're like in a historical event. And, they closed down my library. We had to work from home for 2 months. And so during that time, the first thing I did was I cleaned out my entire fridge and all my cupboards, and I like organized everything. And like kind of at the time there were like shortages of things, it was hard to get flour and yeast and pasta and various things. And so there's all this sort of like going around and trying to find a store that still had flour, and all of that. And then I started doing on Facebook Live, I would do like bake-alongs for my friends. And, it just kind of happened randomly. Like one day I was just making some cookies and I was like, you know what? They have this new feature on Facebook. Maybe I'll just turn on the camera and bake these cookies and see if anyone's watching. And then people seem to enjoy it. And I feel like at that point in the pandemic, everyone was trying to think of ways to entertain each other and connect, even though we were separate and all of that, and so at that time it was pretty exciting. And then I think 6 months, 9 months, a year into it, it just kind of somewhat lost its shine. Cooking was no longer that exciting. I didn't work from home anymore, so like that was another nice thing about working from home is you could make sourdough bread or whatever, and bake banana bread during meetings and all of that stuff. But being back at work, I think I started to concentrate more on like the restaurants in our town and try to still support them. And, living in San Diego, the weather is really nice. So there's a lot of outdoor dining. So I did start going out to eat again or get takeout. And also, one of my best friends is a neighbor. And so his family kind of adopted me into their little pod. And so I'd go over there a couple of times a week and we'd cook, usually we'd cook Sunday brunch together and maybe a dinner during the week. And so that was nice to just have some other human contact and feel like you were doing something normal. But yeah, at this point, I don't know, I have a CSA box and I try to have it sort of inspire me to cook more interesting things, but I feel like I've lost a bit of my cooking mojo at this point. So
just in case there's someone watching this that doesn't know what a CSA box is, why don't you explain?
Oh yeah, so it's community supported agriculture, I think. And usually it'll be just like one farm that you kind of sign up for a subscription with, and they will send you, weekly or monthly or whatever it is, a selection of whatever they're growing at the time. But the one that I use is actually sort of more like a coalition of different farms. And it's nice too, because you can do it as needed. As a single person living alone, I couldn't really accommodate a box of vegetables every week, especially since I don't eat at home every meal or anything. So this one, you can just sign up on their website whenever you want one, and then they'll deliver it to your house for free, which is super nice. It's like the nicest CSA ever.
Yeah.
And they often have like little extra things that you can get. Like right now they had pickling cucumbers, and you could get like a whole 3 pounds of cucumbers or whatever thing. So yeah, it's super nice. And I like the randomness of it, where they give you something like a little out of the ordinary, like fennel or something. And so you can look up a new recipe. It's a nice way to eat more vegetables and be more creative in your cooking, I think.
Yeah, the farm markets in the summer are a lot like that, in the sense that what the farmers have at any given Saturday or Sunday or Wednesday, whenever it is what they've harvested that day. And it's, you know, you can't really go to a farm market looking for something. You got to go to the farm market and figure out what looks good and buy that, and then figure out what to make with it, which is actually a really fun way to cook.
Exactly. And for me, like I can go to a farmer's market and I'll wander around and I just have indecision, and I end up like not buying anything a lot of times just because I can't decide what I want. So I like the CSA in that it just gives it to you, and they're like, okay, deal with it. And you have to figure something out, which I like. I always like to have a little constraint when I'm trying to do something somewhat creative. Like if they're just do whatever you want, then I don't know what to do, but.
Right. You like constraints.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of designers and artists. I now have to buy something from each of 3 different farmers at the Old Saybrook Farmers Market, because if I don't, they'll be insulted. They call out to me by name. I go there.
Right, I bet they do.
I can't go away empty-handed. That would just be bad form. You know, for me, the pandemic has. So I have this thing about cooking. There's 2 things in life. It's either an excuse to cook or a distraction from cooking. So, and people know that about me, and they said what Rhea said, that you know, between buying the stuff and cooking it and eating it and cleaning up, it's like a 2-hour proposition. So at one point, I got so crazy about that I figured out a whole bunch of dishes that you can make from start to finish in 10 minutes. And there's a lot of good stuff. So I just think that I actually cook every meal every day from scratch. I never eat out. And it becomes almost impossible to eat out if you regularly cook for yourself, because the food you're cooking for yourself is so much better than what you can get, you know, just about anywhere, unless you have an executive chef like Katya. But I just also find it's, I suppose the other thing about COVID to me was all this Zooming. I mean, it just drives me crazy. I can't stand it. And there's so much loss not being face-to-face with people. And it's very hard to do anything kind of in the innovation sphere on Zoom. You really need the kind of tacit knowledge exchange that comes from face-to-face interaction. So I'm really, I've started to have those kind of meetings, but people are still pretty reluctant to meet face-to-face. And I think until we do that again, the economy will be stalled a bit, because you just need the face-to-face interaction. But, and I've hiked a lot more than I did pre-COVID, I would say. Cooking and hiking and a whole lot of awful Zooming. But
don't worry, I survived. I almost tried to inhale the lamb. That's the wrong way to do it.
You're taking a bite, yeah. Yeah. So I just want to probe a little bit more, Katya, on you've gone so deep into work on sheep farms that I think you probably have a better understanding of that whole the husbandry of sheep than any of us do. And I'm still curious as to how that deep immersion in raising sheep has affected how you think about your knitwear designs. And also, I guess, how you think about cooking to the extent that you cook lamb. Or maybe you don't because you've been around so many lambs, you don't want to cook lamb. But tell us a little bit more about your farm experience and how that shaped the rest of what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So I always loved knitting, and I think I also, as a young kid, our mother always dressed us in wool, like wool sweaters, wool, like boiled wool, little coats, you know. So, and I think even when I was knitting as a child, my mother wouldn't let me buy acrylic yarn because she was like, "You're gonna put so much effort into it. I'm not letting you make it out of plastic. Like, ew." Like,
Yeah.
and my mom, like lived in Canada her whole life, and so of course they're always in wool sweater. You know, it's just like a different generation and like what the clothes they wore. So that always stuck with me, especially the whole thing of like, why would you put so much effort into knitting something if it's made out of plastic? Like, why would you do that? So I always think about that. But then that kind of led me to really appreciate it as a textile. And then I wanted to go further, and I took a job on a farm years ago. I'd never met a sheep. So I like told them, I was like, "Can I work for you and live on your farm for the summer?" They're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "I'll cook for you, I'll take care of your baby." So I did, and I was kind of like their live-in nanny on the farm, and I learned so much. And it just kept going. And that was years ago. And now I'm like a farmless farmer. Like, I love sheep so much, and I try to spend as much time as I can on farms. And it's really interesting. I try to design. So I'm involved in every step of the process, from shearing, spinning, like all of this, into the actual production of the garment. And I always try in my design to be influenced of where the sheep are from, the farmers, what their story is. It all plays a part in my design process. And even like to the breed of the sheep and where it originated to, and the properties of their wool, because it's all different depending on the breed. And so that all is a big inspiration.
Do you have a favorite breed?
I love Lincoln long wools. Their wool, when spun correctly, it's so amazing, and it has such a nice luster to it. It's very shiny. And because the length of the wool is so long,
wow,
it spins really nicely into a very nice yarn. And I think they're so cute. I think they're absolutely adorable, and they just have really, really long wool. And they're quite large. So I know a few Lincoln breeders out in Indiana that just raise, like, they try to have it, the genetics be as pure as possible. And so they're just a really beautiful sheep. And then
I think there's a couple Lincoln breeders in Connecticut.
Yeah. And there's some in upstate New York, like Emma Long. And it's funny because she breeds long wools. She's in Rochester. She's like way up there. And I bought 2 lambs from her last year. And she gets yarn.
That's a picture. They're super cute.
They're so cute. Yeah, and they're becoming more and more popular. And I also work with Santa Cruz sheep. And there's a bunch of farmers out in Pennsylvania. A lot of them are Amish. The Santa Cruz is a very rare breed. Like critically endangered, and it got really popular among. There was a farmer. He wasn't Amish, but he had like 200 of them in Pennsylvania. he was kind of a hobby farmer that it kind of blew up, where he was like, "Oh my God, my hobby turned into 200 sheep," and he sold them off in micro flocks to farmers in the area. This is like out in like more western Pennsylvania, past Harrisburg. He sold off his flock in micro flocks, and he put them out in like Amish circulators. And so it became really popular among the Amish community because they're also into very like niche and kind of heritage and I don't want to say exotic, but like very niche things. The Amish communities, like their cider donuts, tobacco, very out of the ordinary. So they a bunch of Amish farmers bought these sheep, so now I go and visit them to collect their wool once a year, and it's very fun. And then I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of how to, with the cooking, I ate lamb. I actually lived in Egypt for a part of my childhood, and obviously you're eating lots of lamb. It's a very popular protein. And then and I ate it growing up, and then I actually in this year of March and April, a few months ago, I was living on a farm. I told my roommate, I was like, oh, I'm going away. I just went to go get wool. My friend was like, hey, we're shearing. Why don't you come out? Like, we miss you. Like, let's hang out. So I was like, great, I'll come for the weekend. Like, I'll help you shear. I packed like 2 changes of clothes because I was like, oh, I'll be right back. I was gone for 2 months, like living with them. And so he's a butcher. He works at a slaughterhouse. That's his main. And they raise these Santa Cruz sheep for their meat. And they run a delivery service of milk and meat. And they're really amazing. And the husband works in a butcher shop. But also a slaughterhouse, like a full processing, like not just like a deli, but a slaughterhouse. And I went a few times, and I felt as though I needed to see it. Like, if I've eaten meat my whole life, like, it's not, and I've seen people slaughter them for like Ramadan and Eid in Egypt, but I was like, I really want to know exactly where it's coming from and blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to see it myself. And what's interesting about the people I was living with is that they also, during Ramadan and Eid and these Muslim holidays, they let like these Muslim communities in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania, come to their farm and do halal slaughtering. Which is not the same as USDA slaughtering for religious reasons, and the way they slaughter the animal is different. So I kind of got to see both and be a part of these things and watch it happen. I don't eat lamb anymore because of that. But I do have a much bigger respect for meat and like how I consume it and where it's coming from. So I think that's kind of how it tied into my cooking. But I'm such an advocate for people eating lamb. Like, if you're gonna eat an animal protein, lamb's the best one.
Here's the thing: there's a lot of people that are doing these microflocks like that you talk about. Mm-hmm. If you don't eat lamb, it's not going to be a microflock very long.
Exactly.
It can double every year. Basically.
Exactly.
You have to especially call the males. Mm-hmm. It's not a good gig to be a male in the animal world.
Definitely not.
But what I've heard is there's a bottleneck, at least in New England. I'm not sure it's national, but there's a bottleneck in the slaughterhouses, the abattoirs. It's hard for some of the smaller farmers to get their lambs processed at the right time because there's just this backup. And probing it further, what I've heard, it's not the slaughtering part of the slaughterhouse, it's the cutting floor where they butcher the carcasses and divide them up into retail, cuts. That basically it's a shortage of butchers. That's the problem. Have you?
Because no one wants to do it. It's so sad when I talk to all my friends who are farmers who are like, because I know people that are like have 2 or 3 sheep and they live upstate, and I'm like, that's like boutique farming. But to really meet those like large, like people that sell their meat to Tyson's or people that are like, contribute to the larger food chain, you have to go out west. I mean, Pennsylvania and beyond, or like Western Pennsylvania and beyond. No one wants to do it. So many people are struggling to find, because what would normally happen is you have a farm, the kid in the town is interested, he apprentices you, he helps you shearing, he helps you do this, and then sooner or later they take over and run it 20 years down the line. And that's kind of, or your family is involved and does it, and you raise your kids to do it. No one wants to do it anymore. Like,
to work in a slaughterhouse?
Work on a farm or apprentice a farmer. Like I remember I was out at a friend's farm and they were shearing, and they said, they're like, oh, we brought this kid over for the neighbor's kid or whatever. He's interested. And the whole day he was just so uninterested, didn't want to do it. And he's like, this is like the 10th kid we've had over trying to see if someone will stick. And it's just not, it's not what it used to be. I mean, back in the day, I know so many people of my mother's generation or even older being like, yeah, I mean, who lived out, not in cities, like, yeah, we used to, go down and work on the farm, or I used to do like manual labor. No one does that anymore. So it's really difficult for these farmers.
Yeah, I've seen some contravailing trends to that. We had Colin Sigmund and Siri Swanson from Yankee Rock Farm. I think they follow your Instagram.
Oh my God, I love Siri and Colin.
Yeah, and so there's an example of a young couple starting out a sheep farm. Their parents weren't in it. They're new to it. I mean, they got into it starting at 4-H, but
yeah.
And they met each other through sheep. But they're making a life together around sheep farming and shearing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they're like superstars in my mind.
Yeah, and we need hundreds more like them. But
exactly.
But what I've heard is that as hard a nut to crack as the replacement of the current, the older generation of New England farmers with the next generation, as hard a nut as that is, that there's even more of a problem getting butchers in the abattoirs. And so you have this backup. And the problem with it is, your flock is just going to keep growing out of your ability to sustain it with your pasture. And the other thing is, a lot of the farmers make a lot more money on the lamb meat than they do on the wool.
Yeah. Oh, I know people burn their wool. They put it on a compost pile. There's nothing. So that's kind of, I saw that with my own eyes and I was like, oh my God.
Crazy, right?
And I take it off their hands. I help them figure out a way to get it to be spun. I pool people's wool together and take it to be washed, because it's a system where none of the parts really work that well. As in, like, if you have 20 sheep, you're shearing, you don't meet the minimum to take it to get washed at like Chargers down in South Carolina. It's like the only mill in the country that will wash wool, but you need to meet a 2,000 pound minimum. You're not going to meet that. And then people are like, oh, I don't want to mix my wool with someone else's, I want my own thing. So then they send it to like a smaller mill or a hand spinner, where it costs thousands of dollars for someone to do it.
It takes months. There's a month.
It takes forever.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know if you read Clara Park's book, Vanishing Fleas.
Yeah, I love her.
She had this 500 pound bale of northeastern merino, basically to ship it to Bowman's in Texas, because they wanted woolen and not worsted. And it costs 5 times as much to ship the yarn to Texas and back as it costs to wash it. It's just totally insane, right?
Yeah. No, exactly. So I actually, when I went to Pennsylvania for what ended up being 2 months, I went to go get Santa Cruz wool, but he was like, the guy out there, so it's Benjamin and Kayla Sugar. They're also 26, 28, like they're a young couple. And there are a few people I know like this that are really trying, of the younger generation to be farmers. And so I went out there and I ended up, I had this wool, and then I started kind of shopping around, and I've gotten wool spun before, but where the price really gets you is the mills washing it themselves. And there's only this one washing plant in South Carolina. So I was calling them, and to get it washed, like at a smaller mill, like upstate or Vermont or wherever, it's like $15 a pound or even more, or like $20 a pound. But then to get it washed at the washing mill in South Carolina, it's like 45 cents a pound.
Right.
So that's the price disparity you're dealing with. So I was calling around. I was like, okay, so how am I going to get 2,000 pounds of wool? What am I going to spend on it? How am I going to do this? So I actually stayed in Pennsylvania, and I followed around Ben, who's a butcher shearer, kind of like Colin and Siri. And we collected 2,000 pounds of wool. So now I have 2,000 pounds of raw wool sitting in a barn in Pennsylvania that I'm going to then strap the bales to a truck and drive it down to South Carolina to get it washed at 45 cents a pound, which is cheaper than if I sent it to Vermont. But what would be even cheaper is if I just filled up a freight container and sent it to China to be done. Because it's insane. And I was talking to these farmers, they say, oh, we ship freights of hay to like Saudi Arabia and the Middle East because they can't grow hay out there, which is also so insane to me.
Yeah, totally crazy.
Yeah.
So, Rhea, you've been.
My rice is finally done.
How good, Rhea. So not only are you a great cook, you're a great artist, and you've been doing drawings of some of the 30 breeds of sheep that we have in the Northeast for Northeast wools.
Right.
I don't know if we can put those up on the screen or not, but maybe you can talk about that experience and whether that led you to a favorite sheep breed.
Should I put them on my screen or?
Yeah, let's try it. Let's see what happens. You know, what the audio version of this is not going to benefit from it, but I think it's still kind of a cool thing if you can do it.
Okay. I think the first one is Romney.
Uh-huh.
Can you see?
Just tell us what's going on in this drawing. It's so cool.
Yes, me and Jane was talking about these illustrations, that how it can just talk about few features of the breed and then show how it benefits the industry or human being.
So you have you and a ram, and then you have what the micron is of it, and the total, I guess, 10 kilograms. Oh, that's a lot of, that's a big fleece, because I think a lot of times it's only 7 pounds. So that's like 20 pounds. Wow. And then you show it being spun. That's pretty cool.
Yes, and I think we did some information first, such as these.
Right.
Like show how the micro range.
Right. And there's this sense, I think, that people have that the breeds in the Northeast, particularly the meat breeds, are too coarse for apparel, but that's just not true.
Yes.
So show us a couple more. Okay, Corriedale, great.
Yes. So this breed is like a breed that can easily survive in different weather.
Mm-hmm.
Is it correct? And also it has the soft and long wool that good for hand.
Mm-hmm. For hand knitting.
Hand, yes.
Right.
In this one, no, it's a draft.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, Hold Dorset. Hold means that they have horns, or the horns are gone. One of the two, I forget.
It's just showing that this breed is a good mother for the baby doors, and also its milk is pretty good.
Cool.
And some information of the microns,
of course. Yeah.
And
yeah, the drawings are just so charming, you know. So have you, in drawing these different breeds, have you come to one that okay, there's the one of a bunch of different breeds. That's cool.
This one.
Yeah, so there's a picture of a bunch of different new breeds, along with alpaca, I think, in there, in the middle. So what's the one that has the black head and the gray?
The long hair? Well, no, those ones were like white faces, I guess. It has similar hair.
This one?
No, that one. Yeah, what's that? What's number 3 up there?
Let me see. Number 3, I think it's natural colored border.
Border lesser.
Lesser.
Border lesser, yeah.
Yes.
What's number 4 that has a gray?
Number 4 is Gotland.
Right. So that's kind of like a Viking sheep. That's Gotland, Sweden. Yeah.
Mm.
What's number 10?
Number 10 is Icelandic.
Icelandic. So that's kind of the original Viking sheep, I think. So, I mean, you've drawn a bunch of different breeds. Does drawing them lead you to one that is a favorite for you?
Actually, this is one
Okay.
that I like the most because they have like a various color and all natural.
Yeah, and they just have that. The rams have those great horns. Yeah, they're cool looking, and it's I think it's pretty true to the original Viking sheep, if I'm not mistaken. And the Vikings actually made their sails out of wool. We learned that in another previous lampstand lunch. Great. Well, that's cool. People get a sense of the drawings. That's good. So I just wanted to, you can take those down. I just wanted to ask you one more thing about your family cookbook. You're such a great artist. There's this function in cookbooks. There's the chef sometimes, and then there's the writer, and there's people that take pictures. But there's this other function in cookbooks called a stylist that kind of puts all that together. And given your hand and eye, I would think you would have one of the better styled cookbooks because of the abilities to do that. Are you going in that direction, or are you just going to keep it kind of text only sort of thing like you showed us?
No, I'm sure that I would do some drawings of the dish, so
I really
it
love
would be more interesting.
What's that, Jane?
I said I really love illustrated cookbooks as opposed to photographs. I think it because the food styling trends seem to go out of style really fast, and also I don't know if it's the actual like paper that things are printed on, or if it's just the photography, like the lighting, goes in and out of style as well. But, in my job at the library, I look at a lot of old books of a lot of kinds of deciding whether we should keep them. And old cookbooks, it's always so sad that, the recipes in them are perfectly fine, but the pictures just end up just looking kind of gross after a while. So I always just think that illustrations are so much better. When we wrote our cookbook, I really advocated for that, but sadly they were like, no, cookbooks won't sell unless they have pictures. And so we had to have pictures, but I really think illustrations are definitely the way to go. And I don't know if you've seen Samin Nosrat's cookbook, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. That all has illustrations rather than pictures, and it's so great. So I'd love to see your food illustrations
on the chat. Okay.
What did you say, Rhea?
Yes. You just mentioned the cookbook, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you please write it on the chat?
Yeah. I'll show you too.
Oh.
And this was one of, like the best-selling cookbooks of, the last couple of years.
Salt, fat.
Yeah, she thinks that those
is it backwards?
Those are the four things you need to understand about cooking. That's her.
Yeah. Here, I'll type it in the chat as well.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I wanted to leave some time at the end to ask you sort of a very provocative question, each of you, which is, what's your hope for the world? And Jenny, since you're on the screen, I'll start with you.
Just showing, here's an example of some of the illustrations.
So one of your hopes is that more cookbooks go towards illustrations.
Yes, that is one of my hopes.
But beyond that,
I don't know, hope for the world. I guess just that people can relax a little bit and, I don't know, just concentrate on things we have in common rather than things we don't. I mean, that seems so, I don't know.
Yeah, it gets deep.
Feels a long way away.
That's a good one. Katya, how about you?
Going forward, what we can be hopeful about. I don't know. I think about kind of like redefining what our sense of community is and who we care about, you know. I think that's really important because I think since we've sat for so long, we've had time to reflect on that, and like now that everything's opening up, like how we're dealing and what our relationships mean to certain people, and you know, like our values of how and like how we valued certain things, and I think a lot of things shouldn't be taken for granted anymore. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of what I'm hopeful about, is like more of a sensitive switch. I think people forget that, you know, there's people right around you and you should love them. I don't know. Like that's kind of how I feel. Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
I think people have had time, you know, in this last year to think about what's more important to them. And I see a lot of people, you know, making big life changes and deciding what they really want to spend their time doing. And yeah, and I think it's going to take us a little while to figure out how to be together again. Mm-hmm. But I'm really hopeful, like you say, that's
on that score. I've noticed, you know, it always struck me when pre-COVID, when I was in New York and walking down the street on a sidewalk, how this enormous volume of people going two directions could do that almost like a ballet without ever running into each other. Then we had COVID, and then we, you know, they took the single lanes out of the grocery stores, and it's now two-way traffic. And somehow during COVID, folks totally lost the ability to figure out how to move in opposite directions in a limited space. It's like it's like crazy, you know. It's like they're so focused on themselves, they forget you got to weave and bob around other people that are in there. I think we've become a little solipsistic in COVID. You know. Anyway, so Rhea, what about you?
Well, I think I hope that we could do things slow down, like in a more slowly pace, like enjoying the life itself, not for make money or that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I heard that a lot of my friends, they are working so hard that mostly they rest one day for a week, and other time they some people they do 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day, so they barely had time to enjoy the life and also keep healthy. And I think that's the very important things during the pandemic also. So yeah, I hope that we could slow down.
Yeah, that's good. And you know, there's this thing that's been going on for some time now called slow food as opposed to fast food. And it seems like food and agriculture are ahead of everything else in finding that slow food movement. But we're going to get slow fashion as opposed to fast fashion, and local fashion as opposed to globalized fashion. And that's going to be a better world. That's just going to be a much better world to live in. It's going to be more fun. It's going to be more connected. But we got to really start doing it. We got to really start doing it right now.
Yes.
We're running out of time to be in that better place. But I think we can get there. So do any of you have questions that you're burning to ask of each other, or something that you haven't said yet that you want to say? This would be the time. Anyone?
I had a question for Rhea. Just what was the first recipe you thought of when you thought you were going to put your family cookbook together? Like, this is the first thing we definitely have to include.
I'm not sure about the English name, but it's a pork meal. And it's like you boil the pork first and then cut it in slices and stir fry it. So it's called, let me look it up real quick.
Mhm.
I think it's called double cooked pork slices.
Yeah,
Okay.
you say twice cooked pork. Twice cooked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Twice cooked.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a great dish. Yeah.
Excellent. You'll have to send us your recipe for it. So we
Yeah.
can try.
Of course.
Jenny or Katya, or Rhea or Katya, you have any other questions or comments?
This
No,
was
I
so
think-
good. The stir fry recipe.
Really
Yeah.
good.
I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's definitely better
Make
with
you a
rice.
lamb eater again.
actually.
Katya might make you a lamb eater again.
Exactly. I think this is like kind of a gruesome statement, but I'm kind of shifting into a world where like I don't want to eat an animal unless I've killed it myself. You know what I'm saying? I think that's like kind of like a rule to live by for me now. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
feel like that's not unreasonable at all. I think that makes
Yeah,
sense.
right?
Well, Jenny and I grew up in a hunting family, and we actually did quite a bit of that. So I agree with that sentiment. If you're not willing to
If you're
kill it,
not willing to do it,
then you shouldn't be eating it.
I know.
Yes. And I was actually just thinking about that because I feel like nowadays that we had a loss of the process of how the animal become the meat.
Yeah.
Yes, I think
Yeah,
it's very important.
There's actually people that think meat comes, is somehow is created in a styrofoam tray with a plastic.
Exactly.
Really?
That's its natural state. Oh man. Yeah, that's a good one.
Like I was just cooking crabs for a family, and I was showing the child like the live crab, and I was just like showing him like this is what we're eating, and the mom was like, oh my god, like no. I'm like, he's gonna eat it. Like maybe you should rethink how
Yeah.
you interact with your food. Like, or they're like, I can't believe you have to kill it. And I'm like, everything's alive before you kill it. Like, like there's such like a lapse in like people's knowledge. Yeah, but it's also so hard to voice that without sounding condescending or like aggressive or stuff like that. So it's hard. But.
Yeah. So if you want to wear wool, you need to eat lamb, or somebody does.
Yeah.
And they're not, you have to kill the lamb before you cook it, So killing lambs is part of raising sheep for wool. I mean, it just has to be that way. And it's actually very good for the land. The regenerative farming needs livestock on the land to produce manure to regenerate the soil. It's an essential part of regenerative farming. So, I respect people who choose to be vegetarians, but if we were all vegetarians, we'd be in deep trouble in terms of soil quality. So, yeah. So, well, that's a thought to end things on. And I'll say thank you to our three guests. It was awesome having lunch.
Thank you.
And great.